A standoff between Congress and the Justice Department boiling over. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes blasting the DOJ and the FBI for both withholding information related to the anti-Trump dossier. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom, and good morning to you. I'm Julie Banderas.
And I'm Rick Leventhal. Bill and Sandra are off today. Congressman Nunes losing his patience as demands to produce documents and witnesses continue to be ignored. The California congressman preparing a contempt of Congress resolution against FBI Director Christopher Wray and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy saying he understands the growing frustration.
When you sit back and you look at what has happened, the lack of response, Congress has a responsibility of oversight. They have been ignored. They have been delayed. They have refused to send people in to have hearings or to be questioned. And then when we look at the latest of people being removed that are in centerpieces from investigating when it was Hillary Clinton or making decisions on what investigation should go forward.
Kevin Corke is live in Washington. What is at the heart of this complaint that was lodged by Chairman Nunes?
Well, listen, my friend, in a word, it's stonewalling, or another word, I suppose, could be foot dragging. But by any definition, Rick, this is an abject refusal on the part of agency leadership, both of the DOJ and the FBI, to respond to congressional subpoenas. And that's really at the heart of the frustration. So as you pointed out, in that letter to Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, Nunes expresses frustration for the leadership's failure to comply, citing numerous requests for information and interviews related to the Steele dossier, which some have argued led to the surveillance of Trump campaign operatives, possibly even the unmasking of American citizens in private communications, and eventually, some have also argued, the special counsel investigation. So finally, in his letter, first obtained exclusively by Fox News, thanks to my colleague John Roberts, the chairman said boldly, at this point, it seems the DOJ and FBI need to be investigating themselves. Quite the shot. And as you could well imagine, he is not alone. There are several other GOP lawmakers making it very clear that enough is enough.
We need all of that so we can then prepare to interview, whether it's former General Counsel Baker, whether it is Peter Strzok, whether it's Lisa Page. We need to interview everyone who may have access to information, and we need access to all the documents. And frankly, Jason, we've been waiting a long time for it.
Waiting a long time. You heard Trey Gowdy spell it out there. Now, he also mentioned, by the way, some of the people that they'd like to hear from, among them James Baker, FBI's former general counsel, agents Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and a host of others. The list is long, and unfortunately, in terms of the carriage of justice, a list that is not getting any shorter anytime soon. Rick?
Well, that leads us to our next question, Kevin. What happens next? Is there a deadline here?
Well, I want you to mark your calendar. January 3rd is the next deadline to produce documents and to schedule interviews. But at this point, there are some other lawmakers on Capitol Hill who are frankly wondering when and to what degree will Attorney General Jeff Sessions finally step up his involvement.
One of the things that's created a problem with Jeff Sessions' recusal is in getting responses. Jeff has to, well, I've recused myself on that area, so I can't really get involved in the response. But I think he's going to have to lay down the law that, look, regardless of what the response is, get it to Congress now.
Lay down the law. Now, there is no word on what the Attorney General may have planned. However, it is still possible that a separate special counsel could at some point be appointed. We'll have to see if it comes to that, Rick.
And I think there might be some developments on this over the next few days,
Yeah.
Kevin Corke. So thanks for being on that story for us.
Well, for more on this, Niall Stanage is White House columnist for The Hill and joins me now. All right, so Nunes says that by failing to comply to fully produce documents related to the Trump dossier, the DOJ and the FBI should investigate themselves. What's being said about that?
Their version of the story is that they have already produced hundreds of pages of classified documents and that there are genuine issues that have to be worked through before complying, for example, regarding human sources of intelligence, who they naturally don't want to reveal.
Okay, but he is basically saying that they are not fully producing. So, yes, they've produced documents, but they haven't produced fully. In other words, not all of them. The subpoenas were in August. We're now at the end of December. Why the delays?
Well, I mean, I'm not here to speak for the Department of Justice or the FBI. These things are subject to negotiation. There already have been, as I understand, negotiations between those agencies and the committee. I'm not speaking or defending the position either. It clearly is not a good look for those agencies to be accused of stonewalling. It's simply that we don't know for certain. We know what each side is saying. We don't know what the objective truth is.
Okay, I want to read something that Nunes also says regarding all the delays and the discrepancies, because he says that as a result of the numerous delays and discrepancies that have been hampered, that have hampered the process of subpoena compliance, the committee no longer credits the representations made by DOJ and or the FBI regarding these matters. Now, Nunes calls the DOJ's initial response to the subpoenas disingenuous at best. Now, I understand in any investigation, the prosecution never discloses the evidence until the end of an investigation. But what is the DOJ's reason for not adhering to a subpoena?
I don't believe that the DOJ's position is it's going to disobey the subpoena. Right. I believe the DOJ's position is it is working through that issue and will, through a process of negotiation with the committee, come to a point where they can decide what they can reveal and what they cannot.
Okay. And Nunes also says, by the way, that the DOJ initially claimed the documents didn't even exist, when in fact they did. And that might raise some eyebrows, because when they were subpoenaed by the House Intelligence Committee, which is investigating the Russian interference in the 2016 election, they came forward and said that there weren't any documents, when we all know there were.
Yes, and that is, I think, the strongest element in Nunes's argument, the fact that these documents were apparently withheld. Look, it doesn't matter who you are or what the probe is. If you are revealed to have documents that you denied having, that's a problem. So clearly that is an issue, and that's, to my mind, the stronger facet of his argument.
Yeah, and so he's demanding all these records and available dates for witnesses to testify, as we just heard Kevin Corke talk about. They need to be provided, or at least he's requesting they be provided to the committee by January 3rd. Now, if the FBI and DOJ don't actually hold up to this, they could be held in contempt. I mean, what's your belief of that actually happening?
It would certainly be a ratcheting up of this ongoing battle between the congressman and the agencies. He has threatened to bring that contempt charge against the Rod Rosenstein and the head of the FBI. Clearly, that would be a very dramatic move. There are literal criminal penalties for contempt of Congress, so it would be a very clear intensification of this battle.
All right, Niall Stanage, thank you very much. Great to see you.
Thanks, you too, Julie.
President Trump letting loose in a year-end interview with the New York Times, taking aim at nuclear North Korea, China, the Russia investigation, and Democrats. The president saying, quote, "I can only tell you that there is absolutely no collusion. Everybody knows it. And you know who knows it better than anybody? The Democrats. They walk around blinking at each other." Rich Edson is live in a very warm West Palm Beach, Florida, with more on this. Rich?
Hey, good morning, Rick. And the president also says he believes special counsel Bob Mueller will be fair to him because he says everyone knows there was no collusion between his campaign in 2016 and the Russian government. This is a 30-minute interview with the New York Times. He also hits on Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. The Times asked him whether the Department of Justice should reopen its investigation into that matter. President Trump to that said, quote, "What I've done, I have absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. But for purposes of hopefully thinking I'm going to be treated fairly, I've stayed uninvolved with this particular matter." He also moved on to the congressional agenda, claimed that Democrats could have gotten a better deal out of Republicans in the tax bill had they agreed to negotiate and engaged on the issue. He's also just tweeted and discussed in this interview DACA, the Obama-era policy that protects the so-called dreamers, those brought to the United States illegally as children. He says the Democrats aren't going to continue that DACA policy to protect those dreamers if they don't agree to deal on the wall on the southern border and end chain migration. He also talked about his own foreign policy knowledge, his command of it. He says, "I know the details of taxes better than anybody, better than the greatest CPA. I know the details of health care better than most. And if I didn't, I couldn't have talked all these people into doing ultimately only to be rejected." president also says he wants $1 trillion infrastructure plan. He's urging Democrats to work with Republicans on the agenda in 2018. That will begin to take form as the president meets with congressional leadership on the Republican side at Camp David the first weekend in January. Rick.
And Rich, he also criticized China after those satellite images surfaced showing what appears to be ships trading oil between China and North Korea.
Right. The president's been picking on this for the last couple of days here. This is a report also that originated from South Korea in a publication there that China was circumventing UN Security Council resolutions and illegally providing energy to North Korea. The president in this interview has made the case that he's gone light on China because he's on the trade relationship because he's wanted China to act on North Korea. In the interview, he said, quote, the president, that China on trade has ripped off this country more than any other element of the world in history has ripped off anything. But I can be different if they're helping us with North Korea. Now, China has denied it illegally provided energy to North Korea. The Secretary of State and the President have both said that China is helping on North Korea, but that China can do much, much more. Rick?
Rich Edson in West Palm Beach. Rich, thanks very much.
Well, chaos in one city as a van crashes into a crowded sidewalk. What police are saying about the driver.
Also, the Trump administration considering a naval blockade against North Korea, how this could affect China.
And new rules in the tax law kicking in on Monday. Why our next guest wants to make some of those changes permanent.
The Democrats in the Senate could have made those tax cuts permanent instead of having to do the phase out, but they actually objected.
A shuttle van jumping the curb in Seattle, smashing into a group of pedestrians. The driver apparently suffered a medical emergency. 6 people taken to area hospitals, including the driver. 1 person is in critical condition, undergoing surgery. 4 others are in serious condition. The van driver suffering minor injuries. The sole passenger not hurt.
Big changes coming to the tax code on New Year's Day, but only a handful of them are permanent. Starting on Monday, the standard deduction doubles. It will be $12,000 for single filers, $24,000 for couples, while the child tax credit doubles to $2,000. My next guest is planning to introduce a bill to make these changes permanent. Republican Congressman Rodney Davis of Illinois. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rick.
So Democrats have repeatedly slammed the tax bill, as you know. They say it benefits the rich and hurts the middle class. What do you say to that?
Well, clearly the statistics don't show that. You look at the average amount of percentage of income that is going to be saved by families across the income spectrum. An overwhelming majority of the higher percentage goes to middle income and lower income families. And I, too, believe that we need to make the individual rates permanent. And the Democrats in the Senate could have done that, but instead they chose not to because they wanted a political talking point.
So they could have, but they didn't. So that means these tax cuts could expire in 2025, and you're trying to stop it.
Yeah, we're going to introduce a bill to make them permanent, and I hope that many of the Democrats who talk about making them permanent will join me in supporting this legislation. We'll see. Time will tell if that's going to be the case. But let's also remember the current tax code has many provisions that expire on an annual basis that we have to extend on a regular basis. So it's a little disingenuous to see some of the political rhetoric come out of Washington.
You also say that no bill is perfect, but you and your fellow congressman fought to make this one better. How did you do that? How did you make it better?
Well, first off, when you look at the overall bill, it's a great bill for the American people. They're going to see more money in their pockets instead of sending it to Uncle Sam in Washington, D.C. We doubled the standard deduction. $6,000 for an individual goes to $12,000, $12,000 to $24,000. Doubled the child tax credit. That means you make more money before you actually pay taxes. And we've lowered the rates across the board. This is a good bill, but it needed to be fixed. In the House, they were going to tax tuition waivers. You know, this is a way that many students and employees at universities use to reduce the amount of money they have to spend to invest in their kids' education. We fixed that in the conference committee. No one's going to be taxed on that, and that's a way that we were able to make the bill better before it was signed into law.
Congressman, I also read in your press release that This simplifies the tax code to the point that 90% of Americans can file on a postcard. Now, I hadn't heard that before. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. Remember, in my district and in America as a whole, 75% of all Americans don't itemize right now, and they actually can file a pretty simplified tax form. I believe in my district, you'll see 90 to 95% take the standard deduction, and they'll still be able to do a simple calculation to see whether or not the three most popular deductions, the charitable deduction, home mortgage interest deduction, and property tax deduction, will be better for them. And right now, they're only looking at the standard deduction in 3 or 4 cases. And now many, many more people are going to be able to fill out their taxes in a matter of minutes.
The business tax cuts have gotten a lot of criticism, but you feel that they were and are important. Why is that?
Well, we've got to remain competitive globally, Rick. When we're paying a 35% tax rate here in this country, it's companies in my district like ADM and Caterpillar that have to actually sell more products just to make up for the money that their competitors are saving because they've decided to invest their headquarters and their operations in another country. And you look at economists like Stephen Moore. He's talking about sustained 4% economic growth. That's over double what we saw over the last 8 years. That's going to be huge for growing our economy, putting people back to work, and getting more wages in the pockets of middle-class families.
You say yourself that you can't make a perfect bill, and no one's going to agree on everything, especially not in Congress. And we know Democrats didn't really play a role in this particular bill, but you're still proud of it, and you think it's good for America.
I truly do. I think you're going to see the economic growth that we've heard politicians talk about, but then implement policies that actually constrain the economy. We're going to put more money in the pockets of families. That's a good thing to do. That's why I came to Congress. I didn't come to Congress to send more money to Washington, D.C. It's to make sure that people can keep their hard-earned money and invest in their own families and what they want to spend their own money on. But I do believe we need to make the individual tax rates permanent, and I'm hoping that people like Bernie Sanders, who said that they agree that it needs to be permanent, will join me when my bill gets over to the Senate, hopefully in the next month.
That would be a story, and we look forward to covering it. Congressman, thanks very much for being with us, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Happy New Year to you too, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
So Apple is issuing a rare apology. Why they're sorry for their iPhone slowing down and what they are offering you to make things right.
They're sorry, huh? Plus a profitable year in the business world. The market's setting record after record. We'll take a look back at 2017.
So ending on a pretty positive note for the end of 2017, taking a look at the Dow Jones, right now down about 10 to 12 points, averaging just under 25,000, but nonetheless, definitely coming close to 25, ending on a very positive note as we've been watching the stock market doing quite well this year. And as 2017 comes to a close, it will be remembered as an eventful year in the business world. Fox Business anchor Maria Bartiromo takes a look back.
For the economy and the stock market, 2017 was the year of the businessman turned president, Donald Trump.
Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
His blunt speech on Inauguration Day setting the tone for a contentious year in politics, but a wildly successful year for much of the business and investing world. All the major stock indices hitting records seemingly day after day, shattering milestones along the way, with about $6 trillion in value added since his election.
This is a very big day for your money. Look at that. 24,000 on the Dow.
Business leaders credit much of the run-up to the pro-business, pro-growth agenda of the Trump administration, a rollback of Obama-era regulations and the promise of tax reform, helping the rally. He ends the year finalizing a $1.5 trillion tax overhaul and economic growth of 3% or better for 2 straight quarters.
There's a tremendous enthusiasm for business in this country. So a lot of things have changed.
But there were setbacks for the White House as well. A thumbs down from John McCain, killing the GOP promise to repeal and replace Obamacare.
This doesn't have to be the end of the story.
But in the climate of less regulations and the prospect of higher interest rates, mega deals littered the landscape of corporate America. Broadcom targeting Qualcomm with an offer worth more than $100 billion. CVS trying to acquire Aetna in a merger that could reshape the entire healthcare industry. And AT&T fighting the government in its bid to own Time Warner. Meanwhile, the good and the bad of technology was on display in 2017. Artificial intelligence and robotics taking major leaps forward. But hackers making their mark, too. A huge breach of the very information Equifax was supposed to protect. 150 million Americans' personal and financial data stolen, prompting national outrage from congressional investigations. But all in all, it was a great year for technology as well. Amazon and Google crossing $1,000 a share. Apple marking the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. Apple has now sold more than 1.25 billion iPhones in the last decade. And then there was the scandal decades in the making, rocking nearly every industry in America. Sexual harassment. From a slew of high-profile Hollywood people like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey to major media figures like Matt Lauer, Bill O'Reilly, and Charlie Rose, to numerous reports of a boys' club culture in Silicon Valley, taking down several executives, including former Uber CEO Travis Kalanick. Powerful men losing their positions as the #MeToo movement gains steam. Finally, the year ends with a question everybody is asking: is Bitcoin a bubble or the real deal? The cryptocurrency exploding in 2017, starting the year at $1,000, incredibly cracking the $20,000 range. Where it goes from here will surely be a major story next year as we close out a truly remarkable business year in 2017. I'm Maria Bartiromo, Fox Business Network, New York.
South Korea taking action against the North.
They supply over 90% of North Korea's oil. They functionally keep that regime in power. And for 25 years, they have played the United States, acting as though they're concerned, saying they don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons, but not doing what they could do.
Is there more military action that could stop China or other nations from sending oil to North Korea?
Plus, Apple offering an apology to its customers and a bit of a discount. We'll tell you what next.
Fox News Channel is bringing you an all-American New Year's celebration from New York City and around the country. Catch the biggest live performances and join the conversation using hashtag Fox News 2018. Kick back and watch the ball drop with your hosts Kennedy and Jesse Waters live from the heart of Times Square. Our must-see coverage begins New Year's Eve at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fox News Channel.
South Korea seizing a Chinese boat it says was illegally bringing oil to North Korea in violation of UN sanctions. Lucas Tomlinson joins us now. Lucas, what's the reaction from the Pentagon on this?
Rick, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis just stopped by the press area here just a few minutes ago, and he said there would be more actions taken against North Korea following this latest rounds of UN sanctions. Quote, "I think you will see increased pressure. What form that pressure takes in terms of physical operations is something that will be determined by the cognizant governments. Obviously, if a government finds there is a ship in their port conducting trade that was forbidden under the UN Security Council resolution, then they have an obligation, and so far we've seen nations take that obligation seriously." Now, today, South Korea says it seized a ship last month after performing an illegal ship-to-ship transfer at sea of some 600 tons of oil, prohibited by a UN resolution passed in September. The vessel Lighthouse Windmore entered port in South Korea on October 11th to fill up with oil. But instead of heading south to Taiwan as scheduled, she rendezvoused with a North Korean ship a week later. The transfer captured on U.S. satellite photos released by the U.S. Treasury Department last month. Yesterday, President Trump reacted on Twitter, quote, "Caught red-handed, very disappointed that China is allowing oil to go into North Korea. There will never be a friendly solution to the North Korean problem if this continues to happen." I asked Secretary Mattis if these successful North Korean missile tests this past year impressed him. Mattis answered, "Nothing impresses me, Rick."
Lucas, we've heard denials from China on this point, but it seems like those satellite photos at least are evidence that there was some involvement by the Chinese here.
Well, Rick, this vessel was a Hong Kong flagged and registered vessel. It was leased to a Taiwanese company, which is a little bit murky. But today, Beijing denied all involvement. Quote, "China has never allowed Chinese enterprises nor individuals to violate UN Security Council resolutions imposed on the DPRK. another name for North Korea. And, of course, a country, any country, can't control all the ships at sea. Right?
Well, I don't think we've heard the last of this. Lucas Tomlinson at the Pentagon, thanks very much.
President Trump taking aim at the Russia investigation, saying it is without merit and telling the New York Times what he thinks about the whole affair. In a rare interview, he says it makes the country look very bad and it puts the country in a very bad position. So the sooner it's worked out, the better it is for the country. I have absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. But for purposes of hopefully thinking I'm going to be treated fairly, I've stayed uninvolved with this particular matter. Capri Pirro is an executive in residence at American University School of Public Affairs and a former Ohio Senate Minority Leader. David Hopp is a former Chief of Staff for Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. All right, so Capri, first of all, what do you think, what do you make of President Trump giving the failing New York Times, as he calls it, an interview? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer?
I think maybe, the mood just struck him down in Palm Beach. I think that he was, if I recall correctly, he was speaking to the New York Times at the Trump International Golf Course there in the Palm Beach area. And so I think that, it was on his home turf. And I think that he had a captive audience and was feeling relaxed and comfortable and, wanted to have an opportunity to tell his side of the story.
David, you have to give it to this president. He has been very accessible to the press, even to the New York Times. The one newspaper I think he probably rips the most. So you can't argue that he's not fully being transparent when it comes to giving these types of interviews.
No, he's made no secret about who he likes and who he doesn't like, but he's been very open in talking to the press in many different times and tends to do it on a sort of different schedule from previous presidents. But he has been, between the Twitter use and his own press conferences he gives on the way to the helicopter, or like he did this impromptu one yesterday, he has been very available to the press in a personal way that I think very few presidents before him have.
Yeah, and I think, it could work, hopefully, to his benefit. But, Capri, back in August, regarding what to do with Mueller. His attorney, Jay Sekulow, said that the president was not thinking about firing Robert Mueller, and the speculation out there was incorrect. Everybody loves to speculate the fact that the president wants to fire him. The president now saying that he thinks Robert Mueller will be fair. So is that enough to finally silence all those who believe that Trump has his eye on firing Mueller?
Well, I think a few things here. Number one, I do right now take President Trump at his word and have when he says he's not going to fire Robert Mueller. And I think a lot of that stirring the pot is just to get people riled up. That being said, what he's saying is predicated on the fact that he believes that Robert Mueller is going to treat him fairly. So, if he doesn't treat him fairly, then what happens? Now, I will say this. There is a federal regulation, CFR 600.7D, that basically was promulgated in 1999 in the wake of the Clinton special counsel and that impeachment process, which basically prohibits the president of the United States from actually firing a special counsel. So in this context, he could indirectly do it by canning Rosenstein, who is the acting attorney general in the context of this investigation, but he can't actually fire Mueller directly anyway.
Yeah, but he does have the right to, like you said, in a roundabout way, the same way that he did James Comey. Right. Rod Rosenstein basically appointed this special counsel. If the president is unhappy with his appointment, he has a way of getting him out. He says that for purposes of hopefully thinking I'm going to be treated fairly, he's staying uninvolved. What do you believe is his involvement in the first place, David? Is he involved at all? I know that his advisors are keeping him abreast, so he's involved in that way, but I wonder what more he has to say.
If you look at the situation with Director Comey, he fired Director Comey and things got worse. There's a reality here, and the reality here, this is not going away. It will not go away until it's completed. Now, there's been no finding of collusion anyplace by anyone at this point. And that was the main thing that was being investigated. But the one thing that can't happen, whether the president has the power or doesn't have the power, is that this will not go away until they've completed this investigation. Now, former Director Mueller, the special counsel, does have a responsibility to be fair and to have a group of people who are fairly assessing what the president has done. And that's a responsibility he has. Now, he is a man who has shown through his career the great ability to be fair and above board in this. But he is responsible for everybody he hires.
All right. That's all the time we have. Capri Cafaro, David Hopp, thank you both.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Apple is apologizing to its customers after admitting it was slowing down iPhones with older batteries. The company announcing yesterday it is slashing the price of a battery replacement it says will restore older phones to their original capacity. Claudia Cowan is in our Los Angeles bureau with more on this remarkable story. Claudia.
Right, Rick. It's not often we see Apple in damage control mode, but they are in it deep today, posting a letter of apology on its website for what it's calling a misunderstanding around its older iPhones. Apple rarely responds to press stories, but said in part, quote, "We know that some of you feel Apple has let you down. We apologize." This comes after the tech giant's recent admission that it was in fact slowing down older phones to compensate for degrading batteries. Some iPhone owners have accused Apple of intentionally slowing phones before the release of a new model. The company even faces several lawsuits to that effect. Apple is now trying to, quote, clarify what's going on, saying the slowdowns are really intended to make sure users don't lose a call or they can't take a picture. But tech analysts say the optics here just don't look good. Listen.
This is a reminder to not just Apple, but everyone in technology that transparency is key. You need to be really out front and open with your core customer base. Apple did not say that they were doing this. Therefore, you hear, wow, what? You're slowing my phone down. Well, you just want me to buy a new phone.
Not true, says Apple, which goes on in its statement to explain, quote, all rechargeable batteries are consumable components that become less effective as they chemically age and their ability to hold a charge diminishes. This consumer appreciates the explainer.
At least they're doing something about it and they're acknowledging that there is a problem and they're trying to remedy it.
Apple is also cutting the price of battery replacements by $50 in its ongoing effort to repair the public trust. Will not happen overnight, Rick.
They said they were sorry. I wonder how many Apple iPhone owners are going to accept that.
They're going to have to do more than that.
I think you're right. Claudia Cowan in Los Angeles, thanks very much.
A California man accused of plotting a Christmas Day terror attack, what federal prosecutors say he planned to do.
Plus, looking ahead to next November, how Democrats hope to take back control of Congress in the midterm elections.
I think if the election were held today, there are a lot of people that weren't engaged last year that are engaged, but it's a long time between now and next November.